Rasmussen.
Commissioner Bott,
Here.
Commissioner Britton,
Here.
Commissioner Fisher,
Here.
Chair Frazier,
Here.
Commissioner Knable,
Here.
Commissioner Rasmussen here, Commissioner Stevens.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 3 is approval of the agenda. Unless there's any motion to amend, I'd look for a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve from Commissioner Rasmussen. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Fisher. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say no. Motion carries 7-0. Item 4 is open forum tonight. If there's anything on that is not on tonight's agenda that someone in the audience would like to speak on, they're free to come up to the podium. So at this time, I'll open forum. Anything that's not on the agenda tonight that you'd like to address before the commission. Seeing no takers, we'll close open forum. Item 5 is the chair's explanation and hearing process. The Planning Commission is a volunteer advisory group to the City Council. One of the commission's functions is to hold public hearings and make recommendations on land use and zoning matters. The purpose of these public hearings is to provide an opportunity for each applicant and citizens to present information, ask questions, and express opinions. Since these proceedings are televised and recorded for the public record, anyone wishing to speak must step up to the podium and give their name and address before addressing the commission. Staff reports are prepared and provided to the applicant and Planning Commission in advance of the meeting. The first step in the hearing will be for staff to present a summary of the report. The applicant will then have the opportunity to briefly explain the proposal and provide additional information or comments. Anyone wanting to speak in favor or against the proposal will then be heard. Upon completion of the testimony, the hearing will be closed to public comment. The Planning Commission will then discuss and act on the matter. 2 complete agenda packets are available for viewing on the back table. Please do not remove these items. The City Council will act on these items at their meeting on Wednesday, January 17th, 2024 at 7 p.m. Item 6 is public hearings and applications. 6.1, Lumbermen's Outdoor Storage, case CUP 2023-021 with Connor Jakes presenting.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. It's great to be with you. The application before you this evening is a conditional use permit to allow for outdoor storage. The subject site is located at 7601 100th Street South, which is within the Cottage Grove Logistics Park. The property owner of the site is North Point Development, and the tenant and applicant before you this evening is Lumbermen's Inc. A little background on the site: the Cottage Grove Logistics Park did receive Phase 1 approvals and constructed 2 buildings in 2022. Those 2 buildings were Building 1 and 2 within that master plan site. The buildings are constructed for warehouse, manufacturing, distribution, and office space. And a little background on the applicant. The applicant is a building materials distributor and is looking to occupy approximately 89,000 square feet of the western portion of that building. And I'd also just note that Van Meter currently occupies the eastern portion of that building as well. So the site is zoned I-1 General Industrial. The zoning district does allow for outdoor storage that is incidental to the principal use. It differentiates based on square footage. So any outdoor storage less than 5,000 square feet is permitted by right, as long as you meet the code standards within the zoning district. Anything over 5,000 square feet does require a conditional use permit, which is why the application is before you this evening. And the applicant is proposing 25,000 square feet of outdoor storage to be located in the southwest area of that Building 1 site. So that area is highlighted in red on screen before you, and then the applicant's proposing a couple gates for easier access to that storage area as well. So the outdoor storage is required to be fully screened by code. The applicant would achieve that with a 6-foot tall cedar fence. And some of the materials to be stored within that area would include decking, siding and trim, shingles, and other various building materials that would be distributed. An example of one of the products would be, is on screen before you in the example. Then I also wanted to kind of dive further into screening on this. So from 100th Street South, which is the front of the building, there's ample screening from the berm, landscaping, as well as the building itself. So that outdoor storage area wouldn't be visible from 100th Street South. And the applicant also took it upon themselves to create sort of sightline analysis from the future Hadley Avenue South, which is to the south of the subject site. So that red box on screen is that proposed storage area. And if you move to the bigger image on the bottom right here, it correlates with the red box of proposed storage area. So a passenger in a vehicle on that public right-of-way of the future Hadley Avenue would have a sight line approximately following that red dotted line that travels, north and, or above that sound wall on site. So that proposed storage area wouldn't be visible from the future Hadley Avenue South either. And I'd note there's a 8-foot sound wall as well as landscaping on the south end of that site to provide a visual buffer as well. And with that, I would leave the recommendation on screen before you. Staff is available for any questions. The applicant and property owner are in attendance as well.
Thank you. Questions for staff? Commissioner Rasmussen.
We got this email or letter in front of us referencing a 5-story building. Is there any new planned development like to the immediate south or something I'm not seeing? I'm not sure what they're talking about when they talk about visible from this 5-story building.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, Commissioner Rasmussen, I believe that email was referring to the Norhart development, that apartment building to the west of the building site. So it'd be this kind of shaped parcel here. That would be, I believe it's 5 stories. And then I'm just going to pull up a separate image here. And so this is something that was discussed through the development application, thinking about sight lines. And so the first point was that the industrial development, the outdoor storage, providing it's approved, would already be in place prior to tenants moving into that building. So they would be aware of on-site activities and prior to them leasing that or renting their unit. The other thing is North Point, as part of their original approvals, submitted a detailed landscape plan and followed that plan, and has submitted and has planted numerous trees on the western property line there. The light green dots are overstory trees, the dark green are coniferous trees that would provide that buffer. I would note this red box area has the potential to be removed. Those trees have the potential to be removed as part of that Norhart project. However, as these trees mature, it's staff's understanding that that would further screen as well.
Understood. Thanks.
Any other questions for staff? All right, thank you. This time, if the applicant has anything they'd like to add, they can step to the podium.
Thank you for having us. My name's Tom Heisong. I am going to be the operations transportation manager for this location. We are based in West Michigan. Like you said earlier, we sell building supplies. We are very excited to be moving into this market. This is a new market for us, and we're excited for the opportunities here.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for applicant? Commissioner Fisher.
I have a question. I'm not sure who could answer. So you're leasing this space. So when and if you ever decide to not lease anymore, would you take the fence down and take it with you?
Sure,
Or-
no, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. So typically through our releasing process, hopefully we push for the renewal, right?
Right.
Get them to stay for 20 years. But in the off chance that they don't, that will be considered as a releasing opportunity. It increases marketability to future tenants. Or in which case we will, potentially remove it, just depending on market conditions at that time.
Okay. And maybe for staff, if somebody else does take it over, would they have to redo a conditional use permit for the use of that storage area, or?
I'll have you state your name and address first.
Apologies.
That's all right.
Ryan Zickel, Development Manager, North Point Development, 3315 North Oak Traffic Way, Kansas City, Missouri.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then Connor, if you want to answer the question.
Sorry, I'm not trying to get everyone up.
Commissioner Fisher, so the conditional use permit does run with the land, so that would allow for that storage area. However, I'd also note in the conditions of approval, there is a condition that states if that storage area isn't utilized for more than 12 months, upon written notification by the city, we could require that fence to be removed
Oh,
if
okay.
it's not utilized. So.
Yep, I saw. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant?
I have one.
Commissioner Bott.
So this is for, so what would happen, supposing it's not used and you remove the fence? So it goes back to being a parking lot, or what would be the status of that area?
Correct. That is correct. It would go back to just being a standard parking lot. Any holes that would be left from fence posts would be filled. Asphalt repair would be completed. It would be in a like-new condition so that we can release it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Rasmussen.
I'm just curious with these large pallets of material you're getting in there, how do you get them in there with two 8-foot gates?
You say the gates like this, you take the forklift and you swing them in, or you lift, just go up and over the top of the fence. The forklifts will go higher than the fence will go. You just go up and over.
That makes sense, all right.
Any other questions? That might have answered one of my questions for you, which was, so the letter we've kind of referenced so far asked about maybe a covered storage area. So I'm assuming, tell me if I'm wrong, I'm assuming one of your concerns would be being able to get the forklifts in there then if they go over.
Correct.
Are there other concerns about if it was going to be required to be a covered storage area from your point of view?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Any other questions then?
I have one more.
Commissioner Fisher.
Sorry. Okay, so the building that it's in, is it, like, are there walls already kind of sectioning off each? Like this one in particular has 3 separate spaces, right?
Absolutely. No, that's correct. No, and that's a great question.
So there was a wall already, like, there?
It's currently being built in place within
Okay.
the building.
Because my only thought when I was reading through this was, like, that seems like a really large outdoor space to store things. So why would somebody just not lease more of the building? But if there's already a wall constructed in there, then that answers that question. I
Right,
guess.
no, absolutely. And that wall kind of lines up on the previous plan with the edge of the outdoor storage just to kind of maximize the space that they could use.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll open public hearing, so anyone wishing to speak for or against the application can step to the podium, state their name and address. All right, seeing none, we'll close public hearing. Connor, I do have just another question for you, if you don't mind. So 2 of the requirements that we look for a conditional use permit are that the use won't be detrimental to the public comfort and that it won't impair the enjoyment of nearby property or diminish values within the neighborhood. So with the concern, and I should note, we did receive the email from a resident that's going to be made part of the record of this. But since we've kind of received that now, concerned about if people have an apartment that's facing this open storage area, how do we kind of weigh that then as part of diminishing the use or enjoyment of a nearby property?
Yeah, Commissioner Fraser, that's a great question. I think part of that, when we talk about the full picture of enjoyment, part of that relates to noise, which there's noise standards in place, as well as, it is an industrial use, so there would be trailer parking, which weighing that versus outdoor storage is somewhat similar, right? They're still storing, whether it's a trailer versus materials on site. It doesn't necessarily change how we refer to the conditional use permit, I don't think, taking that into account, noting that generally we have an industrial site and then we stage down through residential zoning districts. It's something quite standard, I would say, where we have a R6 butting up to an industrial use throughout the city in the past, but kind of touches.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions that raise anything? Commissioner Rasmussen?
Ed, previous to this fence, where it's going is currently designated and approved for tractor trailer parking, correct?
Yeah, Commissioner Rasmussen, that's correct.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion by commission? Okay. I do have some concerns, especially with the resident pointing out that this is going to be right next to an apartment complex where presumably some of these apartments will overlook the storage area. I think it is a good point that Commissioner Rasmussen made, that if it wasn't gonna be a storage area, it would be tractor trailer parking, and so what's the difference between those two uses? And so I guess in my point of view, a conditional use permit would be appropriate for the outdoor storage at this time, so. Anyone have any further comment?
I want to weigh in too.
Commissioner
So do we
Fisher.
know that this apartment building is actually being constructed? Because it would not be shocking to see an application come through and it never come to fruition. So here we are trying to decide a hypothetical person renting a hypothetical apartment in a hypothetical building that's not been built yet. And here we have people who are following the law and asking a reasonable ask.
Yeah,
Like,
Commissioner
I
Fisher.
feel like, considering all the hypotheticals seems a little strange to me.
Yeah,
That's just my thought.
Commissioner
about
Fisher,
it.
I would direct that to Community Development Director Schmitz.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Fisher. So the Norhart project does have its approvals. They are still working to continue to move forward, so we very well might see that construction happening in 2024. Irregardless, the site is zoned R6 for that high density. So whether it's the Norhart project, of course, we would hope that another project comes to fruition and would be that same density.
Right. And I'm not implying that I don't want the apartment there. That's
Yep.
not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that that's in the future, and who knows what will actually start happening there.
Yep.
So, I don't know. I'd rather look at shingles than a bunch of trucks personally, but I guess that's just my thought, so.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'd look for a motion then.
I'll make a motion to approve the conditional use permit, subject to the stipulations in the staff report.
I have a motion from Commissioner Fisher. Do I have a second?
Second?
Second from Commissioner Rasmussen. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion carries 7-0. 6.2 tonight is Roers Company Apartments, case PP 2023-020, SP 2023-020, and PUD 2023-020 with Mike Brosla presenting.
Maybe, okay. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Roers Company has submitted an application for site plan review, plan unit development, and preliminary plat for subject property located at 6850 East Point Douglas Road, highlighted in red on the screen. Located to the east of the subject site is White Pine Senior Living. Also adjacent to the site is Cottage Grove, Legends of Cottage Grove. To the north is open space, and to the west is Highway 61. A little background on the site. The subject site was originally platted back in 2007 with an office use in mind for the proposal here. As you can see, there's a lot going on with the site. It's been over 16 years, and the area has changed quite a bit since the original approvals. For example, the Legend site that's currently there used to be supposed to be office buildings. That was changed back in 2016 when the Legends was approved. And now here in front of the site, we have an application for an apartment building. The subject site consists of 5 lots, 3 outlots, and 2 lots of record. We'll start with outlot C and D. Here, they are some stormwater ponds that were constructed for the development of the subject parcel. We have lots 3 and 4, which are buildable lots. However, there is a large pipeline easement that runs through the site. This pipeline is owned by Flint Hill Resources. There is 2 crude oil pipelines that run through there. And they have very restrictive rules on what can be placed on there. Luckily, the applicant is working closely with them to make sure they meet their requirements for constructing within that easement. Also on here, we have a trail easement shown in orange adjacent to White Pines that currently has a Class 5 walking trail that leads up to a natural trail that goes up to the top of the ravine for Camel Humps Park. Then there's Outlot A, which was deeded to the city as an unbuildable outlot. So let me make it clear that this was not dedicated as parkland. It was dedicated as unbuildable land. So there's no parkland dedication credits with this. So the city does own it, but there is no parkland credits with it. So the applicant is requesting, or is proposing to purchase Outlot A from the city. And we'll get to that here in a little bit. So previously, we have seen applications for this site. We'll get into that a little bit here. The land use for the subject site is zone mixed use in the 2040 comprehensive plan. The zoning is mixed use. However, prior to last year's zoning code update, the subject site was zone B1 with the PDO. However, that was inconsistent with the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan it has mixed use, so we switched it to mixed use zoning as well, so they complement each other as required by state law. So with that, I'd like to mention also too that the zoning map does have mixed use. An apartment building is a permitted use within that district. On the map on the screen here is the proposed preliminary plat. We'll walk through a couple items here. The light blue area is a drain and utility easement where the existing stormwater ponds are located. The applicant will be enlarging those ponds to handle the additional impervious surface on site. Then there is the pipeline easement. Again, the applicant is working closely with Flint Hills to meet their standards to be able to construct in there. The gray area is the building area. And then on the east side of the property in green, there'll be a trail and a conservation easement. We're not quite sure if we're gonna do a conservation easement or not. Why I say that's because the applicant's proposing to save a number of trees in the subject area, in this area up here. And that was kind of a requirement. If we were gonna sell the property, we told the applicant that we're interested in preserving and allow those trees. They're high quality trees in that area. So we wanna make sure those trees are preserved. So we're working with the applicant to either do a conservation easement or some kind of easement to protect those trees. Also, the natural trail will come up. Ooh, that is terrible sounding, I apologize. Will come up and then turn and then go up the ravine here towards the top of Camel's Hump Park, to Camel's Hump Park. All right. Again, this is a permitted use on the subject site. The applicant is proposing a 144 unit mixed income apartment building. The units will range from studio to 3-bedroom. The proposed density is 37 units per acre. The maximum permitted by the mixed use land use district is 40 units per acre. The applicant is proposing 29 units at 50% AMI or area medium income, which achieves numerous goals within our comprehensive plan of providing affordable housing options for the community. A couple months ago, we approved Trellis Senior Living, which was targeted towards seniors, but that was 54 units of affordable housing at 60% AMI and 30%. And this project here has 29 units at 50%. That brings our total to almost 100 new affordable units this year, which is a pretty good job for us to get in those requirements and working with the development market to developers to hit that threshold. The rest of the units on site, 115, will be at market rate or below. So for example, a person making $43,500 is at 50% AMI, according to HUD in Washington County. Family of 4 making $62,100 would qualify for 50% AMI as well. HUD also limits rents depending on the AMI. So a 1-bedroom apartment at 50% AMI is capped at $1,087, and a 3-bedroom is at $1,615. I want to remind everyone, we were at the end of the year, so HUD will be coming out and Met Council will be coming out with new standards next year for rents. So those numbers may go up, may go down, everything more likely will go up, knowing the trends. So we'll take a look at the site plan here. The applicant is proposing a U-shaped building. It's unique. It is going to be built into the hill a little bit while preserving the trees. Some of the amenities on site, the applicant's proposing a fitness center, game room, community room, heated garage, bike repair station, and all units will be market rate finishes. And then what's unique here, it is back to the horseshoe shape. A lot of the amenities are within the horseshoe area, interior there. So which reduces the impacts of the surrounding neighbors. As we previously said, there's a senior assisted living next door and another facility. So a lot of the primary activity center will be in this kind of core here. Some of the items inside there's a playground, a tot lot, there's a fire pit with seating around it, a courtyard, patio, dining, recreational lawn, and a dog run and a wash station. think that covers everything on that one. All right, planning considerations. The applicant is requesting some flexibility. Planning unit development is a zoning tool that we use to provide flexibility from the zoning district standards in exchange for a project that advances the goals identified in the city's comprehensive plan. This project here does, as I previously mentioned, meets a lot of our goals in our comprehensive plan, providing affordable housing, multiple options for community members, and there's a couple, quite a few other ones that are identified within your staff reports. So the applicant's requesting flexibility due to the site, as we went through, has some constraints on there, to building height, architectural materials, parking ratio, and landscaping flexibility. I will go through all those items as we go through the staff report, but it's worth noting that in return for that flexibility, we are achieving those items in the comprehensive plan, like trail connections, for example, affordable housing, mix of housing. The applicant is using higher quality materials on the building, providing a trail connection, to list a few. However, besides those items, this proposed plan in front of you tonight meets the rest of the zoning district standards. But I'll circle one here on the screen. The applicant is requesting some height flexibility, which we'll talk about here in a minute. So the first one we'll talk about is parking for the site. City code requires 230 stalls or 1.6 stalls per unit. The proposal in front of you tonight has 216 stalls or is parked at 1.5 stalls per unit. So there is 82 surface parking stalls and 134 garage parking stalls. So it's short, there's a deficit of about 14 stalls. However, there's a number of factors that can play into that. The applicant does own other sites or manages other sites of parking at 1.5 or less and has told staff via the narratives that they have not received any complaints. And there's other projects in the area that have similar parking ratios. So we walked through the site here. As I previously said, it is built into the hillside. So off the cul-de-sac on East Point Douglas, to get to the lower level 1 here, you would access off this access here driveway. That will get you the subsurface parking. And then the other access, we'd have to come through the parking lot to access to here, to access this parking here, which is like on the first floor of living units on it, per se. You can see some of the amenities on here and the access to the building here. Take a walk through, no pun intended, through the site here, the pedestrian plan. There is an existing sidewalk on East Point Douglas Road that connects all the way up to Hartwood Avenue. The applicant, as part of the PUD flexibility, is proposing a 6-foot sidewalk connection to a natural trail up here. Also, there's other trail connections throughout the site. Well, not trail, sidewalk connections, excuse me, and a couple patios. The architecture on the building, the applicant is requesting some flexibility. Precedent has previously been set with the legends in the area. But due to this unique site, as you drive down 61, this is one of the first sites you see as you come into Cottage Grove. And so it's kind of a gateway to the community, per se. So the applicant really took that into consideration when they were designing the building. They use a lot of stone on these elevations that are visible to 61 to kind of add a nice accent to the building and add some decks and a lot more glass and other features on the building side visible from 61 to create that gateway feel. That was one of the items that the council brought up during the workshop on this item. So you got 2 renderings here. This is looking from the northwest. So if you're going southbound on 61, this elevation you would see on the top of the screen. Bottom screen is if you're going north on 61, you would see this elevation here. You can see there's the access to the lower level garage. It's built into the hillside here. Again, the ordinance requires 65% class 1 materials, which is stone, glass, and brick, and other items is determined to be high quality by the community development director. The applicant is using a mix of glass and stone to get to 47% class 1 materials on the building. For comparison, Legends Cottage Grove is at 34%. The applicant's also using specialty block at 10%. The specialty block we found at the lower elevations in here to kind of break up the facades. And then fiber cement, which you see on a lot of the newer buildings, residential buildings throughout the community and throughout the metro area, kind of these areas in here. And then to building height, previously mentioned the applicant's requesting flexibility for building height. The proposed, if you're on the 61 side of the building, identify the red box on the screen here. The height from grade to the top is 67 feet. Now, if you go down to Legends, it is 73 feet on that same elevation. So there's a red line that's shown on your screen here. I hope this doesn't make that noise. That would be the proposed elevation of the subject, or the application in front of us tonight compared to the Legends. The applicant is proposing a flat roof to kind of distinct itself from the surrounding properties as well. So, landscaping, as we went through this previously, the site does have some constraints with that pipeline easement and some other items on there, so there's a lot fitting on this little piece here. So the applicant is asking for a little flexibility to plant the trees. One big thing when we're looking at landscaping plans, we want to look at survivability. Yes, you could probably plant all 85 required trees on there, but will they survive? Probably not. So what the applicant did is kind of space them out. They're all also looking at adding additional trees on here. There may be some additional opportunities to plant some trees in this general area here, and then maybe throughout the site as well to get that number a little bit closer to 85. So right now, the proposed development has 35 overstory trees. It's worth noting that ornamental trees can count towards overstory trees. So every 2 ornamental trees equals 1 overstory, which gets that total up to 35. It's 15 coniferous trees, and then 26 ornamental for a total of 53 on site. However, it's worth noting previously, as you mentioned, there is a significant amount of trees being preserved in this area here as part of the agreement on selling the land to the applicant. And also, the applicant is proposing a lot of shrubs and perennials and plantings at the base of the building and within the surrounding the parking lot, 408, where ordinance requires 94. It's worth noting this project does not require tree mitigation. A lot of the tree removal is volunteer trees. If you look at the images on the screen here, these were also included in your packet. When the site was graded in 2008, a lot of the trees were removed for development. If you look at the air photo here, 2023, you can see a significant volunteer trees that have grown in here over the last 16 years that the applicant will be removing as part, kind of get back to the original development area. So tree mitigation is not required as part of this application, as I believe the mitigation is required at 40% and the applicant's removing 29%. That is detailed in the staff report as well. It's also worth noting that the stormwater pond here, that's, previously we talked about that a little bit. The applicant is going to be oversizing that. You can see here the original size of it, and now they're going to be oversizing it to handle the impervious surface runoff. Applicant did submit a detailed photometric plan. They are proposing 5 overhead lights or pole lights in the parking lot. Then it's kind of unique here. They're using these kind of ball-eared lights throughout the site too to provide lighting, so it's not as impactful, especially on this access drive here adjacent to the white pines. Also, this photometric plan is meeting city code where it is 0 lumens at the property line, so there's no spillover there. Just out of precaution, we did require that any lighting on site have light shields on there and be downward directed to reduce lighting impacts, just in case. Public hearing process. The applicant held a neighborhood meeting on November 14th, 2023 at the Legends. 33 residents were in attendance. The general questions asked specifically were more related to what is the site selection process for Roers, why this site, construction timing, anticipated rents, traffic noise, both from the project and Highway 61. Also in our conversation that was brought up during the neighborhood meeting process was noise from the users there. As we previously talked about, the building is shaped in a way that allow the activity is in the core, screened for adjacent properties. However, the largest talking point at the meeting was anticipated increase in traffic in East Point Douglas Road as part of this project. Also want to say that we did send out public hearing notices to properties within 500 feet. I believe there's 4, there's not a lot of them there, so we got the White Pines and the Legends. And additionally, we did publish a public hearing notice in the Pioneer Press. At this time, we have not received any comments at writing this. However, since this was such a talking point, I'm gonna ask our Assistant City Engineer, Crystal Riley, come up here and talk more about the traffic, go a little more depth on that, as that was a major talking point for the public.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. The applicant's engineer provided a trip generation study for us to review. This 144-unit apartment building is anticipated to add additional 654 trips to East Point Douglas daily. Their trip generation numbers came from the Institute of Transportation Engineers, the standard tables, and they were provided to our consulting team for review, and our consultant concurred that 654 is a reasonable expectation for this development. Currently, there are 1,100 trips per day on East Point Douglas, those coming from Legends and White Pines there, the senior living facilities, as well as the daycare that's down there on the corner. Bringing that total, adding this 144 unit apartment building, the total would be 1,750 trips per day. It's important to note that East Point Douglas capacity has the capacity to carry 2,000 to 5,000 vehicles per day. So while this is a noticeable increase in traffic on East Point, there's really no significant safety or travel time concerns from the development. It's also important to note that we looked at the intersection of East Point Douglas and Hardwood Avenue to evaluate conditions there. Our consultants studied a 4-way stop and studied it to see if it met warrants for a 4-way stop. Warrants were not met, so at this time we are proposing no changes to the existing road system and intersection in that area. So with that, the recommendation is on the screen before you, and staff is available for any questions, and the applicant is here as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for staff? Commissioner Fisher?
Sorry, Ken.
No, go ahead.
I win. Okay, so when you say that it didn't warrant a change at that intersection, what is the threshold and what would warrant a change there? Because we've had discussions about that particular spot, and there's that ODB kids theoretically, again, going in there. I mean, they've broken ground, so they're moving forward, but I mean, that intersection it's not a nice spot. So I'm just wondering what the threshold is and when it would be addressed.
Correct. So there are a lot of different factors that contribute to those intersection warrants, such as traffic volumes, but also sight distance and elements like that. We took the O2B kids, which was a really significant traffic study for that intersection. That traffic study had incorporated a multifamily development on this parcel. The development that's being proposed is a bit bigger, so we did have an addendum to the traffic study from the O2B kids. And even with the additional traffic that's generated by this development, those various warrants still were not met.
So what are the warrants though? Like, what are the thresholds? Like, I mean, is it close? Is it like a hair under? Because to me, like, that's the biggest thing I'm worried about is like, I mean, obviously that road can handle it, but that little bitty intersection is already, I mean, that road is a little bit of a nightmare. I don't know.
Yeah.
If I'm the only one that thinks that. So to me, I guess that's my biggest concern with it.
Might need a little help from City Engineer Amanda Meyer here, but yeah.
I'm just wondering, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it's an answerable question. I don't know what the threshold is.
Yes.
Because it sounds
Excuse
great
me.
that it didn't meet standards. Well, what's the standard?
Yeah, so good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. So there's a variety of criteria that would need to be evaluated whether or not an all-way stop is considered. Things like if it would be warranted for a signal, you could do an all-way stop as a temporary measure. There are other things revolving around 5 or more crashes reported in a 12-month period susceptible to correction by an all-way stop. There are also items related to vehicular volume, so the number of vehicles per hour. There's I think it's an 8-hour time frame that they're counting those vehicles. It's also about the speed, the approach speed of vehicles. So if traffic is exceeding 40 miles per hour, for the 85th percentile, so majority of traffic exceeding a specific speed limit approaching an intersection. And let's see what this last one is. So there's 4 different criteria that we would analyze. So it's really about the number of vehicles within a specific time frame, the crashes, for sure, and then just general, like as speeds are increasing and really having to evaluate that intersection from a safety perspective. Does that help clarify a little bit?
Yeah, I mean,
I can give you the,
no, like, 100%.
no,
Sold.
unfortunately,
It's
no.
it's not a black and white answer. So I apologize for asking a gray area question, but
That's okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Britton.
I had a question about the pipeline easement. And is the parking lot over the pipeline easement? And if so, how does that work? Is it because it's not necessarily a building, permanent structure that they can dig it up if they need to? How does that play into things?
Yes, Chair and Commissioners and Commissioner Bryn. That is exactly correct. There is absolutely no build within that easement there. That's clear. You cannot go past this line. So they cannot build, but they can build a parking lot in there. However, the biggest thing that the applicant's working with them on is grading in there, because the pipeline owner wants a specific depth between the pipeline and the surface. And so the applicant's working closely with them on that. I can tell you from conversations I've had with the applicant stuff, the primary area that they're working with the pipeline owner is circled on the screen. That's the area where they're trying to get that depth to a right area.
Is that depth intended to be such that the weight of the car traffic and parking and stuff doesn't interfere with the pipeline's operation or long-term feasibility?
Nope, that's a great question. The depth is for maintenance. They want to make sure they have easy access for maintenance. They don't have to dig too deep. If something happens, they can get in there and resolve the matter quickly. It's worth noting too that there is going to be a permanent easement in here to allow for access into that site. Also, they can access off of 61 if that ever comes a time they have to access the pipeline. But the applicant's been working really closely with the pipeline on this because it kind of hinges on that, for lack of better words. So far they have identified that Flint Hills is supportive of it. However, they're still working on some minor aspects of that.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Stevens.
I'm going to apologize in advance for this one. So it says, due to site constraints, the applicant is unable to plant the required amount of trees in a practical way. However, they're proposing to plant over 400 shrubs. So I think everybody knows that trees have different benefits than shrubs. And what are the site constraints and what happens when they cannot meet the tree requirement?
That's a good question, Chair and Commissioner. So part of the constraints on site is the pipeline easement itself. They don't want roots going into that. So I won't be shocked as the plan gets to the process, a number of these trees within the parking lot will probably be removed. As I can imagine, they do not want those going to that area. So I can see modifications there. The shrubs do go lower into the soils. However, I'm not a landscape architect. I don't know if the applicant is able to address it a little bit better. So I will ask the applicant to address the landscaping on that one, on why some of the plantings are proposed in the areas on the plan.
Can you, before you step away, let's say they aren't able to meet the required, did we recently update our code that they have to like pay in some sort of fee or something so we can plant the trees elsewhere?
That is something I've discussed with the applicant, opportunities to, if they're unable to, if the applicant's unable to plant the trees on site, they have brought up an opportunity if there is a fund they can pay towards to meet that number. So that's something we're working on. As a condition of approval, we do require, we want to see a final landscaping plan prior to the issuance of a building permit. However, the applicant's realizing that that is a standard that we did address with them, that we'd like to see that number come up. However, we understand the site constraints with the pipeline and with that, but I'll let the applicant kind of talk more into where they are after the revising the plan.
Okay.
Before you get to that, we're going to finish questions with, I made a note of it, so we'll get to it.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff?
I have one.
Commissioner Fisher?
Oh, do you have, I'm sorry. Okay, so back to the parking lot thing. Let's say that Flint Hills has to access the pipeline. Is there gonna be some sort of written something saying who tears it up, who puts it back together, all of those different things?
Correct, Chair and Commissioner Fisher. Yes, the applicant will have to enter into an encroachment agreement with Flint Hills. And then that agreement will specify, if in case of emergency, how cars are moved and all that kind of stuff. And I'm gonna assume, not assume, I know the applicants have to work with the tenants here to notify them if, in the case that emergency does happen, that they can move cars. But that's worst case scenario. There's these easements all over the place. So, but that's the applicant's responsibility to work with their tenants on that one.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bob?
So my question is regarding the request for increasing the height of the building. I don't know if it's a question for you or for the requester here, but can't you change the footprint of the building? Like you have the horseshoe shape, you can thicken up maybe the sides or thicken up the bottom U there, and then thereby decrease the height.
Yeah, that is a good question. I'll let the applicant address that one. I believe they have their architect here. They can talk about the site design and how they configured it.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Commissioner Rasmussen?
Just to clarify, the Legends of Cottage Grove is the building, two buildings. It's not the White Pine, it's the one next to it, correct?
The White Pines is adjacent to the, sorry, I'm erasing things. White Pine, it's testing me. I can just point. The White Pines are the two adjacent to the property. The Legends is a larger facility, a little bit down the road there.
All right, so from an elevation standpoint, that Legends is the tallest in that
Correct.
grouping, and this one will be slightly below that.
Yeah. It's also worth noting that we have contacted White Pines. We've emailed, we phone called, we've knocked on doors. We've done everything we can try to get input, and we have not heard anything. So we follow the normal procedures with every applications. To this point, we have not heard any comments or any concerns. I know the applicant, I can speak for the applicant as well. I know they have reached out as well, trying to get their input. But yeah, with that, I can answer any more questions.
Great. All right, thank you. Is this time if the applicant would like to step to the podium? If you say your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. My name is Travis Fouchold. I'm a development associate with Roers Companies. We are a multifamily developer based out of Plymouth, Minnesota, 2 Carlson Parkway, Plymouth, Minnesota 55447. We are a multifamily developer that's based out of Plymouth and have been around for just about 11 years. What we do is predominantly affordable housing, new construction projects in and around the Twin Cities and all over the country. We've grown pretty significantly and have done a lot of our work in the Twin Cities, but have grown and have expanded all over the country, doing affordable housing and market rate development. So here what we're doing is proposing a workforce project, a number of units, as Mike mentioned, being unrestricted or at market rate rents, with 20% of units at 60% AMI and 5% of units at 50% AMI. And so we're really excited to present this project. As Mike mentioned, we think this project meets a lot of the city's goals in the comprehensive plan. And it is quite a challenging site, which is why we are seeking some flexibility here to address, the first comment on our landscaping plan and tree count. The site is constrained on the north part of the site over by White Pines and that green area. And I guess so that parkland to the north, there's a really sharp hill. And what we're ultimately doing to get to that 144 units is having to carve out a little bit. And so what we're going to do is propose a retaining wall that is just north of our building that'll run alongside the trail. So that is kind of the site constraints to the north. We want to plant trees and conserve trees on that hill, but also plant trees in a place that they're going to survive and live. The site constraints on the south part of the site are a access easement. I believe that's granted to the city to allow them access to the stormwater that is on the northwest part of the site. So I don't believe any trees can be planted there, or I should say a meaningful number of trees can be planted there. In the stormwater, we are unable to plant there, and then are unable to plant a certain type of tree that is in that gas pipeline easement. So I know Mike has provided that feedback to our design team, and we'll certainly be working to get as many trees as we can to set them up for long-term success. Otherwise, we'll find a way that'll be, satisfactory to the city to make sure, we're paying our fair share to meet code. So that is trees. So there will be some revisions made to the landscaping plan, and we'll make sure that's in a spot that works for everyone prior to formal approval. To address your comment on the gas pipeline easement, if something were to go wrong, we would obviously preserve the right to have Flint Hills repair team in and on, into the site. Will preserve and record an easement that will provide them access to make sure nothing is ever going to be in the way of their access to the pipeline. If something were to go wrong, they would need their excavators to come in and repair it. And I think ultimately that would be our expense to, once the pipeline is fixed, that we would, as a long-term owner-operator, repair that and, redo the parking lot if anything were to happen. God forbid it doesn't. But I forgot to mention, we're long-term owner-operators. We have an in-house property management company that'll manage this. So, we're not, going anywhere. We're hoping to be, really good partners, really good neighbors, really good members of the community. So, on the height, we are seeking a height variance due to the site constraints I mentioned earlier. Ultimately, we are unable to expand our building footprint and increase the parking garage horizontally, as we are constrained by the site boundary, constrained by the hill. We would have to dig out a lot more of the site, which is really expensive, and are really unable to go south or west with our sight line and with that gas pipeline easement. Additionally, we are unable to go further to get more underground parking downwards, as there's bedrock underneath the surface. So those are the site constraints we're working with, and to ultimately get to 144 units. Ultimately, if we were to chop a floor off our building and go a story shorter, the project would unfortunately be financially not feasible. So that's kind of the background as to why we are building it at that height. And so with that, happy to answer any other questions. Otherwise, our architects, Cost Wilson, architects are here. They're great. They're local, and they've done other projects in the city of Cottage Grove. And then Laux is our civil engineer and landscape architect. So if there's any questions I can't answer, I'll defer to the experts. But again, appreciate the time, and thank you for consideration.
Yeah, thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Rasmussen.
With your experience with this development type, we're making, giving a little flexibility to 1.5 cars per unit. Are you pretty comfortable with that you're going to be able to handle all your parking peak times with your background and experience?
Yeah, and ultimately, across our other projects in the state of Minnesota, at this market rate or workforce project type, we do see less drivers with those affordable units. Oftentimes, 1 or 2 bedrooms, you see a single parent or a parent with children. So, there might be only one driver or no drivers. Ultimately, there are some site constraints, but we have done projects at a lower parking count. Ultimately, we're trying to hit 1.5, and we will not provide anything less than that. But ultimately, as a long-term owner-operator, we want to set this project up for success. Our property management team is not going to tolerate, and the neighbors are not going to tolerate on-street parking. So ultimately, we feel comfortable there. We would like to propose something that's going to work for us as well as the community. So we've done projects at lower parking ratios, but ultimately feel comfortable at 1.5.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you.
Thank you all.
This time we'll open public hearing on the application. Anyone wishing to speak for or against the application can step to the podium. All right, seeing none, we'll close public hearing. Any further discussion from the commission? Commissioner Rasmussen.
I feel this is a pretty challenging, tight kind of specialty site, high visibility, very important to our community. We've seen it come through a few times in the past, and it seems like this fits in there pretty well, and they've done a pretty good job working with the site constraints, and I think it'll be a good fit.
Any further comment?
I would just add with all my tree questions that it's nice to see that you're also asking for reduced parking. A lot of times, we see like tons of extra parking, but then there's not enough room for trees or stormwater. So, yeah, I think that's nice to see that in general you are actually constrained, and it seems like you're doing what you can to fit in what you can.
I guess I'll just add too, when I was reviewing this, the thing that jumped in my head was, it's interesting that some of these things that they're asking for, they're not just asking for a variance, because I think there's probably the factor there to get a variance, but instead of that, the applicant worked with the city to do a PDO, so it benefits everybody. The city's getting some of the things that we would like to see out of this project. You're getting some flexibility, and so I think that's also a good sign for continued relationship with the city and the community, is that this isn't a, we just need help. It's so how can we make this work for everybody? So I appreciate that too. So.
Did you mean a PUD?
PUD, maybe I said PDO.
Okay.
Planned Unit Overlay.
Okay.
Any further comment? Otherwise, I'd look for a motion.
Motion to approve subject to the conditions stipulated in the staff report.
I have a motion from Commissioner Britton. Do I have a second?
Second?
Second from Commissioner Rasmussen. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed say no. Motion carries 7-0. Item 7 is approval of the Planning Commission minutes from October 23rd of 2023. Unless there are any amendments or corrections, I'd look for a motion to approve.
Motion to approve the minutes.
I have a motion to approve from Commissioner Knable and a second.
I'll second.
Second from Commissioner Fisher. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed say no. Motion carries 7-0. 8 is reports. 8.1 is recap of November and December 2023 City Council meetings with Emily Schmitz present.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, here we are again, a whole month behind. So I'm going to go back all the way to the November 1st meeting to start with a quick recap. And there's just one item on that meeting that I kind of wanted to highlight. It was the Washington County CIP. We provided our letter, a comment letter, I would say in support, of course. We're always encouraging Washington County's projects as they plan for the future. But a couple of items to note in our letter, of course, encouraging them to continue to look at the Park Grove Library as we see the development in the area. We want to encourage them to evaluate that site and any improvements that would be beneficial there for the community as a whole. And then quite a few park projects and trail projects that we'd like to support. And finally, the 100th Street realignment south of I always say south of 100th, but it's not. It's just 100th Street realignment to Highway 61. And then moving to the November 15th council meeting, a couple items there. The Tanucci lot split, if that rings a bell, about a 4-acre parcel just south of 65th Street. They were here just almost a year ago. So we did extend their approval for another year as they continue to navigate how that will work best to complete that split. And then I just wanted to mention, of course, continuing to work on the Public Works building, utility and engineering building down, that actually is south of 100th on Ideal Avenue, and the permanent water treatment facility that is currently under construction down there. So moving full steam ahead on those projects that are, of course, beneficial to this community as a whole, and in my opinion, one step ahead of our surrounding neighbors. And then December 6th. I'm not going to mention the new city council appointment. I'm going to pass that off to Councilmember Kambata to talk more about that. But I just wanted to mention one other thing. We did approve, or council did approve the CIP at that meeting. I know back in October, our engineer team gave a wonderful presentation to you on that, so that will extend us out, our CIP another handful of years. So with that, I will just say happy holiday season to all of you. I'm so glad that we were able to get back together before the end of the year. Before we know it, we'll be in 2024, and we look forward to more big things. So again, I'll pass it off to Councilmember Kambata.
Thank you. I'll start by saying you did say PDO, but that just shows your length of tenure because we don't use that term anymore. But PUD and PDO are kind of synonymous, planned development overlay versus planned unit development. But I did catch that, and it's okay. Yeah, we have a new council member. So Monique Garza was sworn in at our last meeting. She's lived in our community for nearly 10 years. She's got a husband, she's got kids in the community. She actually runs the Movies with Mo, so the outdoor movies that we host in the park at Highland Park in the summertime. She's responsible for that. So she's been active in volunteering in our community, and she's really looking forward to being able to help make a difference on council as well. And then I wanted to thank you guys again for your time. I know especially December gets to be busy for a lot of people. I'm glad that I got to see all your lovely faces again. And with that, I'll stand for any questions you might have.
Thank you. PDO is etched into my brain, and so it'll never change. I will try, but can't make any promises. Any questions for Councilmember Kambata? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
8.2 is response to planning commission inquiries. We did have some inquiries from our October meeting. We received an email approximately a week later with those responses, so I'll consider that filled. 8.3 is planning commission requests. Any new requests? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 9, which is an adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn from Commissioner Rasmussen. How about a second?
Second?
Second from Commissioner Britton. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Motion passes. We are adjourned.